Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is packed with 60s pop culture references, callbacks to his previous films, and other Easter eggs. Here's everything you might have missed. And warning, major spoilers ahead. First off, the title is a reference to Sergio Leone's films Once Upon a Time in the West and Once Upon a Time in America. Leone is perhaps the most famous director of spaghetti westerns, and Tarantino has not been shy about how these movies influenced his own filmmaking. In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Rick Dalton goes to Rome to shoot a few movies with directors Sergio Corbucci and Antonio Margheriti. Corbucci directed a real movie called Django, which would go on to influence Tarantino's Django Unchained. Meanwhile, the name Margheriti pops up in Inglourious Basterds.
Si chiama lei? Antonio Margheriti.
There are other references to Bastards early on in the movie. A scene showing a movie in which Rick Dalton burns a bunch of Nazis alive with a flamethrower will give you flashbacks to Tarantino's film, and it foreshadows the history-altering course ahead. The camera also pans over two comic books, Sergeant Fury and Kid Colt Outlaw. Tarantino has cited Sergeant Fury as an influence on Inglourious Basterds. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood opens with a clip from the fictional Rick Dalton series Bounty Law. A man is shot and falls off a roof, at which point he lets out a big Wilhelm scream. This particular scream effect has become something of an inside joke in the movie industry, and it pops up in several other Tarantino films. Bounty Law takes place on a set called Melody Ranch. It's the same set used in Tarantino's Django Unchained. Rick also guest stars in an episode of a real 1960s show called The FBI.
The FBI.
Rick plays a character named Michael Murtaugh, originally played by Burt Reynolds. Reynolds is supposedly one of the inspirations for Dalton. Tarantino originally planned to cast Reynolds as George Spahn before his untimely death. That role ended up going to Bruce Dern. And speaking of Dern, he once appeared on Lancer, the real series that is featured heavily in the film. Tarantino likes to cast the same people over and over again. In a Bounty Law scene, you'll notice a quick cameo from actor Michael Madsen. Madsen has popped up in many of Tarantino's movies, perhaps most famously as Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs. Another Tarantino regular, Tim Roth, was supposed to play Jay Sebring's butler. His scene was cut, but his name remains in the credits. While Tarantino alums Bruce Willis and Uma Thurman aren't in the movie, their daughters Rumer Willis and Maya Hawke each play a small role. Kurt Russell plays a stunt coordinator named Randy. He also portrayed stuntman Mike, a stunt driver turned killer in 2007's Death Proof. Stuntwoman Zoe Bell pops up to fire Cliff Booth after he beats up Bruce Lee. Bell also starred in Death Proof. In addition, she was Thurman's stunt double in the Kill Bill movies, and a stunt double for both Diane Kruger and Melanie Laurent in Inglourious Basterds. Speaking of Bruce Lee, his influence has popped up in Tarantino's work before. In Kill Bill Volume 1, the Green Hornet theme plays during a sequence in which the bride, played by Thurman, arrives in Tokyo. In Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Cliff refers to Lee as Kato, the name of his character in Green Hornet. Lee was associated with Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate in real life, and he even gave each of them martial arts lessons. While the film centers around the Manson family murders, the notorious cult leader shows up only briefly in the movie. Damon Harriman, who plays Charles Manson, will also play Manson in the upcoming second season of the Netflix series Mindhunter. Manson arrives at Tate's home in a Twinkie truck, which he reportedly drove in real life as well. In the first scene we see of Manson's family, they're dumpster diving outside a grocery store. You can hear them singing a song called I'll Never Say Never to Always, a real song written by Manson.
Always is always forever, is one.
While singing, the girls are standing under a mural depicting James Dean on the poster for his last movie ever, 1956's Giant. There are numerous references to shows, movies, and culture of the era if you look closely. A bus stop advertises Fright Night, a horror TV series that some of the characters are watching later in the film. The Vogue Theater is showing the '68 film The Night They Raided Minsky's. Rick appears on a real '60s show called Hullabaloo. singing a song called The Green Door by Jim Lowe. The radio advertises The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury, and the drive-in theater is playing the 1968 film Pretty Poison. A lot of Hollywood legends loom large over this movie. A few of them come together during a sequence at the Playboy Mansion. The scene is partially narrated by Steve McQueen, played by Damian Lewis. McQueen was one of many real-life influences for Rick Dalton. Like Dalton, McQueen started his career doing Western TV shows. Unlike Dalton, McQueen got out of TV and ended up becoming a major movie star. In fact, Dalton talks about auditioning for a role in The Great Escape, a 1963 war movie that would define McQueen's career. Using innovative CGI, the movie actually inserts DiCaprio into a real scene from the movie. Also at the Playboy party are members of the Mamas and the Papas, Michelle Phillips and Mama Cass. A montage in the movie is set to their classic song, California Dreamin'. On the evening of the murders, we see a copy of the sheet music for the Mamas and the Papas song Straight Shooter. This same song could be heard in the movie's trailer. In real life, the sheet music for Straight Shooter was found on the piano when the bodies were first discovered at Polanski's house. The movie includes a stunning, history-bending twist in which the Manson family members break into Rick Dalton's house instead of Sharon Tate's house, and Tate's life is spared. However, there are still real details from the murders incorporated into the scene. Among them, when they first break into the house, Tex Watson tells Cliff, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." Watson reportedly said this upon breaking into Tate's house that night. When preparing to play Tate, actress Margot Robbie worked closely with several members of the Tate family. In an interview on Today, Robbie said Sharon's sister Deborah gave her some of Sharon's jewelry to wear in the movie. The night of the murders, Tate and her friends went to dinner at a Mexican restaurant called El Coyote. In the movie, when she walks into the restaurant, Tate notices a porn movie premiere happening down the street. This was likely happening at the Eros Theater, which, at the time, was an adult movie theater just around the corner from El Coyote. Today, the Eros Theater is the New Beverly Cinema, a movie theater owned by none other than Quentin Tarantino. That's not the only theater to pop up. Throughout the movie, Tarantino pays tribute to many of the great movie theaters of his childhood in Los Angeles. Two such theaters include the Bruin, where Tate goes to watch her movie The Wrecking Crew. At one point, Cliff drives by the iconic Cinerama. Both theaters still exist today. There are many iconic LA locations throughout. Rick meets producer Marvin Schwartz at Musso and Frank Grill, which has been around since 1919. The crew filmed on location, and the restaurant even let them use the dishes the restaurant would have used in the 1960s. At one point, we see Cliff picking up Rick from the Columbia Pictures lot. Columbia, which is now part of Sony, produced Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. On the studio's wall, you can see a giant poster for the Barbra Streisand classic Funny Girl, which the studio released in 1968. Another famous location can actually be spotted in plenty of other TV shows and movies. When Cliff, Rick, and Rick's new wife return from Rome, they walk past a blue mosaic tile wall in LAX. It's the same wall we see Jackie move past in the opening credits of Jackie Brown. Many movies and TV shows have been shot in front of these famous walls. It popped up in an episode of Mad Men, and in 1967's The Graduate, another movie that revolutionized Hollywood during this time. In an additional throwback to The Graduate, Cliff blasts Mrs. Robinson in his car when he first encounters Pussycat. Cliff is an amalgamation of many famous Hollywood stuntmen, including Gary Kent, a stuntman who actually encountered Charles Manson on Spahn Ranch. But the part of his storyline in which he picks up a hitchhiker who ends up being a member of the Manson family is reminiscent of late Beach Boys member Dennis Wilson. In real life, Wilson picked up two hitchhikers in Malibu who ended up being two members of the Manson family. When Rick and Cliff are together in Italy, Rick talks about how he needs to downsize in his life. He mentions possibly moving into a condo in Toluca Lake, a neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley. Toluca Lake also played a prominent role in Pulp Fiction.
I'm calling my partner in Toluca Lake.
There is one element that, while small, ties nearly every single Tarantino movie together: a fake cigarette brand called Red Apple. They pop up a few times in Pulp Fiction. In Kill Bill Volume 1, the bride walks past an advertisement for them. They're also in Hirschberg's pocket in Inglourious Basterds. You can even see a pack of them in The Hateful Eight, set in the post-Civil War era. The brand pops up in 2 instances in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. At one point, Cliff holds onto a pack while smoking outside Rick's trailer. Then, during the movie's end credit scene, Rick does an ad for the company despite smoking a different brand throughout the movie. In it, he mentions that Red Apple has been around since 1862. Several new fictional brands were also added to the Tarantino universe, including Old Chattanooga beer in Cliff's fridge and the dog food Wolf's Tooth. Since Tarantino grew up during the 60s, he also added a few personal touches to the film. Cliff drives a Carmen Gia, just like Tarantino's father did, and some of the props in Rick's house are from Tarantino's personal collection, specifically the Hopalong Cassidy cups. Was there anything we missed? Let us know in the comments.